Is Maine here, the governor of Maine?
Down here,
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
Well, we are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't.
A few moments later.
Maine DHHS says it's losing $91 million in funding because of these cuts, and the commissioner says that will impact a wide array of public health initiatives.
And we are back, y'all. Thank you for watching today. Go ahead and hit that like button, people. You know it helps us out a ton, and of course it helps you because it helps us. Now, y'all, we talked previously about the feud that is brewing between the Trump administration and the state of Maine, primarily because Maine does not want to ban biological men from women's sports. For some reason, they just have this penchant for allowing biological men to compete against biological women. I don't understand it. I cannot explain it, but that's the world that we're living in now. So the Trump administration has apparently decided that it's going to get back at Maine. And, you know, it's interesting because the Social Security Administration literally retaliated against them almost immediately to a somewhat embarrassing effect. So we're going to take a look at that here. Before we get into it, y'all, let me remind you, we are a paralegal school. We've been around for 20 years helping people work and move up in the paralegal field. Right now, we have a 50% off of our tuition. So if you're looking to get your paralegal certificate, if you're looking to work in the paralegal field, go down to click the link in the description until April 7th. So just a few more days, you can get half off of tuition. So let's take a look at what happened when the Social Security Administration decided they were going to get back at Maine for being rude to Trump.
A stunning admission tonight by the man who currently heads the Social Security Administration.
He says he targeted Maine alone in a policy change that was announced one day, then quashed the next.
It's something the Social Security Administration has been doing since the late 1980s, allowing hospitals to help new parents apply for a newborn Social Security card while they're still in the maternity ward. At the other end of life, funeral directors notify Social Security when a person dies so that they could be taken off the rolls. It's a very convenient program that people across the country use every day, and we here in Maine nearly lost those services because of this.
You not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
Well, we are the federal law.
The terse exchange over Title IX between Governor Janet Mills and President Donald Trump at the White House back in February over Maine allowing transgender athletes to compete in high school sports. 2 weeks later, the Social Security Administration said it was canceling the newborn program in Maine and only in Maine, a decision that was reversed just a day later.
That clash that you just saw there, that threat by Trump and Maine's Democratic Governor Janet Mills, is the reason that Maine was singled out by Social Security. Emails obtained by the committee show that just a week after Trump's clash with Mills, the acting commissioner of Social Security, Lee Dudick, directed his staff to cancel the contracts that allowed Maine to process Social Security number and death records electronically, writing, quote, "No money will go from the public trust to a petulant child."
So all of this comes down to allowing biological men to compete in sports against biological women. Not just compete against biological women, but to go into sports that have been reserved for biological women, right? Now, I said in a previous video, this is very simple. Throughout history, the way that men's and women's sports have been segregated and classified are by height, by weight, by years of experience, etc., by objective factors that you can quantify, that anybody can measure, that a doctor could measure, for example, or that someone who's looking at your sports history could measure. It's never been a case of how do you feel inside? Like, do you feel this way or do you feel that way? We're going to categorize you by an internal feeling of yourself. That's never been the case. But of course, that is the way that things are going now in several areas. And of course, people are fighting back. Just this week, there was a situation where a woman in a fencing tournament decided not to compete against a biological man, and she was summarily disqualified. Let's take a look.
It's a female fencer standing her ground by taking a knee and refusing to compete against a biological male. A video from over the weekend shows this. That's Stephanie Turner, in your view of the camera here, forfeiting a match, taking off her helmet, taking a knee against a transgender athlete. Referees gave Turner a black card, which immediately disqualifies her from the entire competition.
It was an important event, though. And this is something that you've been preparing for an awfully long time. You decided that you were going to take yourself out of the tournament. What was the thinking in leading up to the decision where you took a knee?
Right, so this was actually a regional tournament held by the USFA at the University of Maryland. So part of my pre-competition ritual is to check the online registration to see who is going to be there and just double check my check-in times. And on the registration list, I saw Redmond Sullivan's name listed there. And I recognized this individual from a previous Redux article that had been written stating that this person was a man who had previously competed on the men's team at Wagner and was now competing as a woman within the USFA. So from that point, I just got really disappointed with the USFA and with this tournament, and I just felt like at a loss. I'd already committed so much money to it and training hours, and I was literally looking forward to this. I do this tournament every year. Yeah. I think this may be like my 10th year in a row doing this tournament. And I just got really sad and I started crying because this was like the last thing I wanted to deal with in my competition.
So at one point in the video, so we see you take a knee, and then the official comes over. What did you say to the official at that point?
So the official came over to me and asked if I was still refusing to fence, and I said yes. Oh, and are you talking about initially, yes, or when I got the black card?
No, initially.
Initially, I told them that I was refusing to fence because this person is a man and I am a woman, and this is a women's tournament, and I refuse to fence on principle.
And then later, right after this, we see your opponent comes over. What did you say to your opponent at that point?
My opponent was a little bit confused, thinking that I was maybe hurt, and I said, no, I am refusing to fence you because I'm a woman and you are a man. I have much love and respect for you, but I will not compete against you.
So here's what USA Fencing said in a statement to Fox News Digital. USA Fencing enacted our current transgender and non-binary athlete policy in 2023. The policy was designed to expand access to the sport of fencing and create inclusive, safe spaces. It goes on to talk more, but this idea about inclusive, safe spaces, what about inclusive, safe spaces for female athletes?
Right. There's nothing for me and there's everything for him, because I have no choice as a woman, as a female, in where I compete. I am a woman and I have an athletic disadvantage to men, so I compete in the women's division, which is where I rightfully am. But he has been given this opportunity to fence in the women's division, and he can compete. He can easily compete in the men's division.
So doesn't it seem like everybody would be better off if we just continue to stick to objectively observable qualifications and traits as a way of deciding who competes against whom, right? We can observe you're a biological male, so you go with the men or the males. We can observe that you weigh this much, so you go into that weight category. We can observe you're this tall, so you go into this height category. We can observe that you have this age by looking at your birth certificate, so you go into this age group. We can observe that you're from this country, so you compete with this nationality. I mean, that's how it's always been, right? And now all of a sudden, it's about how do you feel? Hey, what do you feel like on the inside? You know, Don't get it. I personally don't get it. But now Maine is they obviously get it, but they're paying the price. As you're going to see in this next piece, they're losing funding already. For some reason, they think that this is worth putting millions, tens of millions of dollars on the chopping block for. I don't get it. Apparently they must. Let's take a look.
Now it's 6:33 here on this Wednesday morning. A massive wave of job cuts at U.S. health agencies impacting at least 10,000 positions this week. Long lines seen outside of the headquarters for the Department of Health and Human Services in Washington, D.C.
Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says the layoffs will streamline the agency and make it more efficient and effective. But many, including Maine Representative Shelley Pingree and Jared Golden, are challenging that.
They say that among those staff cuts are all of the workers in the state's low-income home energy assistance program. Representative Golden questioning whether it is efficient to fire people whose job it is to help Mainers afford heating oil when it's cold.
On top of the layoffs, $11 billion in federal health funding is on the chopping block, and Maine is suing over it. Jamie Aguilé is live in Portland with the details on that lawsuit. Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Jess and Terry. This lawsuit is 45 pages long, and Attorney General Aaron Frey's signature is in here, along with the attorneys general from 22 other states. This lawsuit says that cutting $11 billion in public health grants has caused chaos. It also says that if that money is not restored, then essential programs will need to be cut. Maine is losing here more than $91 million of funding, much of which was supported by COVID-related legislation. Attorney General Frey, when talking about this lawsuit, explained that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services says they ended these grants because the pandemic is now over and the grants are no longer needed. A lot of that money was allocated to Mainers through the Title X grant program, which was dedicated to providing family planning and basic preventative care to nearly 31,000 Mainers who are uninsured, underinsured, or are low income. We also know that funding cuts from the Federal Department of Health and Human Services has now resulted in 40 employees being laid off from Maine's CDC.
So in this last story, you're going to see that Maine does need the money. Their university system is literally crumbling, okay? And maybe that's one of the reasons why the Maine university system bent the knee to the Trump administration's demands sooner. But still, the state of Maine is trying to resist. I firmly predict that they will give in because they need the money, just like every other state needs the money. Let's take a look.
The University of Maine system's top leader says the condition of its campuses is in a crisis. Chancellor Daniel Malloy addressed the legislature this morning for the first time in person since becoming chancellor in 2019. But he also noted the need to renovate the system's campuses. He asked the legislature to approve the funding that is in the governor's proposed budget. In his address, Chancellor Malloy said that the UMaine system has $1.6 billion in deferred maintenance. He says more than half of the facilities and 3/4 of residence halls have not been meaningfully renovated in 50 years.
The condition of our campuses is a crisis. It challenges recruitment and retention and our ability to deliver 21st century education and research-driven innovation.
So now I'd like to hear from you. Let me know, what do you think about all of this? Do you agree with what seems to be retaliation by Trump? Some people will say yes, some people will say no. Let me know what you think. And also, do you think that we should move more toward an internal feeling of how I feel in order to make sports groupings and classifications? Or should we stick with the objectively observable facts that we have always used throughout the history of at least several decades, if not centuries, of sports competitions? Let me know what y'all think, but before you do, please stop, hit the share button, share this video out through email, text message, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, or all the social mediums. Share it out to somebody who may want to see it. And of course, if you are not a subscriber, please do subscribe. Thank y'all for watching. Love y'all, and we'll see you back in the next one.
Maine DHHS says it's losing $91 million in funding because of these cuts, and the commissioner says that will impact a wide array of public health initiatives.
It compromises our ability to respond to disease outbreaks.
The U.S. Health and Human Services Department canceled $11.4 billion in grant funding across the country, claiming that funding was granted to handle the COVID-19 pandemic. And since the pandemic is over, the Trump administration says that money is no longer needed. But Maine DHHS Commissioner Sarah Gagne-Holmes says the money funded projects for all diseases, focusing on issues like vaccine distribution and outbreak management.
We know there will be something in the future that we'll need to be able to address in a timely fashion, and without this funding, our capacity to do so is impacted.
She says the funding slash impacts work with 70 vendors and terminates at least 40 contracted Maine CDC employees like Jeff, who worked on tracking infectious diseases in the state.
The employees who have done such a great service to the state of Maine and to the people of Maine deserve better.
Whether or not he gets his job back is now in the hands of the court. Today, Maine and 22 other states filed a lawsuit against the Federal Health and Human Services Department, working to get that grant money back.
We have Congress passes a law that supports a program, that funds a program. The president is just deciding that he wants to disregard the law. We need to sort out who's right.
Coming up at 6, the mental health programming that was tied into this money and the programs that are at risk without it. In Portland, Anna Kuhn, CBS 13 News.